Hello everybody and welcome back to Train Simulator Classic, where today we'll be trying out the new Glasgow Subway add-on that Thomson Interactive made. I'm recording this video on launch day, which in New Zealand is April 29th, but I think in England it's still April 28th, with time zone differences. Which reminds me of the L. Stewart song, Time Passages. I should listen to that song again. Anyway, oh by the way, if you haven't heard of L. Stewart, he's quite a good singer and songwriter, although I only know of two of his songs, Year of the Cat and Time Passages. Anyway, yes, unfortunately, and much to my own frustration, this is the second time I've tried recording this video, because the first time I had managed to obviously get the train going into the system, and I think I got as far as like St. Enoch, and then I tried moving the I didn't realise that the doors were closed before I tried moving the train, and it threw me out the game. I did not think that TS could still do that. Anyway, so I'll just have a quick read of this, although you've probably done that already. It says, "Good afternoon." Actually no, before I get into it, I'll say that for this video we will be playing through one of the scenarios that comes with the route. For my second video on this line, I'll either do another scenario or just a very simple free roam. Anyway, this one is called Inner Circle Service, and it says, "Good afternoon. Today your train will..." Jeez, this guy looks a little bit miserable. Come on, mate. You're on the Glasgow Subway. You ought to be happy. Alright, it says, "Good afternoon. Today your train will form Service 11 on the Inner Circle. Prepare your train and drive in manual mode to Depot Line 1, where you will change cabs." I think that should say cabs, not cabins, "and reverse to your first station stop at Ibrox, formerly Copeland Road. Be careful to slow down on approach and ensure that the whole train is in the platform at Ibrox before opening the passenger doors." Yep, I know the drill by now. Haven't really got much time to hang around here, which is a bit annoying. Alright, parking brake off, slow lighting on. And I think we can go. Currently we are, of course, at... Oh, it's because we're still in automatic. Right, here we go. Can't hang around for too long, unfortunately, because the timetable is very tight. Anyway, we are currently at Broomloan Depot, and this is interesting because it's the only part of the subway system where it's actually out in the open. And as you can guess from what I've just said then, the whole rest of the system where the passengers the only part where the passengers get to see, that is entirely underground. It's the same kind of setup in a way as the London Underground's Victoria line. And indeed, this Glasgow Subway also uses automatic mode, or automatic operation, although it doesn't even come close to just how advanced the technology on the Victoria line is. Indeed, I think the technology for these trains is from like the late 1970s. One of the many things I learnt about this system just from playing this add-on here in TS is the layout of the depot. Because until today, I didn't actually know that that trains had to go into a head shunt in order to access the branch that would take them into the tunnels. But indeed, that's what we have to do today. Well, it's what we'd always have to do. What am I on about? Right, I think... I'm still a bit rusty on this lot. Already moved to the rear cabin, you moron. Okay, I think we're still in manual mode. And restricted to 18 kilometers an hour, so I think we can proceed. Indeed, this type of train is it doesn't have a proper designation. Like, it's not like what you would get on the National Rail Network in the case of Glasgow. They've got trains like that have designations like Class 320, 318, or 380, or if you want to go for something older, how about the 314? Indeed, of course, you can drive the Class 314 in Train Sim World 2 on the Cathcart Circle add-on. And I have, of course, featured that route on my channel in the past, and I'll put a link in the top right corner to one of those videos if you'd like to have a look. I would certainly appreciate it if you could check it out. Although I'm not forced. Just keep in mind that I'm not forcing you to have a look. It's entirely up to you. I'm sorry for suddenly going quiet, but I don't know if you can hear it, but there is a bird squawking in a tree that is literally just across from my room. Or at least there was a bird squawking in there. I think it's flown away. And oh, there it goes again. Right, currently going through this part of the system. I quite like these these like crossover junctions to allow the trains access to and from the depot. Because I think behind it, the next station behind us is Govan, and obviously as you can tell, the one that we're currently heading towards is Ibrox. Somewhat fun fact about Ibrox station is that it used to be called Copeland Road, and during that modernisation in the late 1970s it was renamed to Ibrox to apparently match a nearby football stadium. As Jeff Marshall pointed out in his video, I think it was called Secrets of the Glasgow Subway. It's definitely worth a look. It's definitely worth a watch if you want to know a little bit more about this system. Although it's not like a proper informative documentary. If you're any bit familiar with Jeff Marshall's videos, then you'll know what I'm on about. He doesn't really do documentaries, or I suppose he did with some of the old subsurface trains on the London Underground, like the A stock, and I think the A, C and D stock. Anyway, if I can tolerate that bird squawking any longer, I'll try to proceed as normal. Anyway, as you can see, we are at Ibrox, and I suppose it's as good a time as any to say that I'll just pause the game briefly. As for how I've done that, I've pressed the pause break key on the keyboard, because if you did it in the normal way by pressing the escape key, you get this. Right, so I just thought I might as well talk about, or bring up a couple of things that I think are important. Firstly, the price of this route. I'm going entirely off New Zealand currency because that's where I live, and that's the currency I've always used, naturally. It is the normal price for this route is $31, which I think is too expensive for. Excuse me. It's too expensive for an add-on this small, and because all you get is just this very short, I think it's only about 6.5 mile double track loop, plus the short branch to the depot, as well as one type of train. And it's currently and until May 6th, it's on sale. It's I think on Steam for 25% off. So I got the route for $23, which I think is okay. It's not outstanding value for money, but I think it's an okay price, especially since I'm quite a big fan of the Glasgow Subway IRL. And although saying that, I've never actually been to Glasgow in real life, although I'd certainly like to. Not just for the subway, but other aspects of the city, like the Riverside Museum, seeing the River Clyde, what else? Riding on some of the ScotRail EMUs that I mentioned earlier, like the 320s and 318s, etc. Not the 314s, sadly, as they were all retired in 2019. Anyway, so just going back to this route, the gauge of the track is very unusual. It is exactly 4 feet, and obviously not standard gauge, which is 4 foot 8.5 inch. And I've never understood why this system has such an unusual gauge. Because it means that any future trains, like indeed the white ones that Stadler are currently building for this system, have to be like really specific and almost like tailor-made for this unique line. And it's not like a standard off-the-shelf unit. Like, what's an example? I can't actually think of any examples really. Well, aside from maybe the Stadler Flirt family. Yes, it is actually what it's called. It's like Fast, Light, Intercity Regional Train. I don't approve of that acronym necessarily, as I'm still single. And I don't like being reminded of that fact. Anyway, so yes, that looks like an AWS ramp, although it obviously isn't. So yes, this route, as I said, I've already talked about the price, and I would suggest don't buy it at its full price. Like, wait, and if you miss the 25% discount that it's currently on at the time of recording, I would just suggest wait for it in a sale, because I think value for money is very important, especially in this day and age. I'm looking at you, Hornby. As even though I think this route is quite cool, and it's not often I say that word, it's not one for those who like network style routes. I mean, as much as I like underground lines, especially this one, I will concede that there's not really a lot to do on this route. All you can really do is just passenger services with these old second generation subway trains, which I call GS2s. Not to be confused with the Southern Pacific Railroad GS2 steam locomotives, I might add. Yeah, there's just not a lot of replay value, especially when you take into account the fact that you can't use this train on any other routes, owing to the gauge issue, or in Cressida Green's case, gauge the issue. Aren't we now? Yep, I've already read that blurb the first time I tried recording this. So, yep, the reverse is in notch A. Now we need to put the throttle to parallel, and then press auto start. And now we're off. So now we're going to do an anti-clockwise run around the circle, with our first station being Cessnock. If my research is correct, Cessnock is one of only 2 stations on this line to retain its original entrance. Indeed, but it's one of the few, a lot more than 2, to retain the original island platform. That funny little noise, that's what you get when you press the space bar. It's meant to be like a horn or a whistle. Which is certainly news. Hearing this is definitely news to me, because I didn't even know these trains had like a horn or a whistle. These windscreen wipers, most of the time, they actually look a bit redundant, seeing as they're generally not used. Although I suppose it makes sense to have them installed at the very least for when the trains are moving in and out of the depot. Right, I suppose now it's as good. Actually, I do want to explain a bit about the history of this system, but I think mainly so I can have a breather in a way. I think I'll probably stay quiet for the next couple of stations and maybe explain the history once we get to Shields Road. We'll see how it goes. I've got a bottle of water here. As Mo from the Doodlebops would often say, refreshing. Why do I get the feeling that no one else watching actually knows what the Doodlebops were? Right, next up, Canning Park. Well, I've screwed that up. Yes, I had a bit of a brain fade there, and basic instincts went to press the auto start button again rather than initially opening the doors. Anyway, here we are at Shields Road. If anyone remembers that classic song about the Glasgow Underground, you'll probably remember the name Shields Road. I think it was sung by an act. I think it was called Francie and Josie. One of the guys, I think one of the guys in it was actually called Ricky Fulton, if I'm not mistaken. Right. Yeah, a bit of a sloppy driver on this system, if I'm honest. Oh, by the way, I kind of want to attempt to sing the chorus of that song, but for the sake of your sanity and indeed my own dignity, I won't. Right. So yes, as I was going to say, I'd also like to, well, as we're going along, I'd like to talk about the history of the Glasgow Subway, although it's a bit of a potted history, if potted is the right term. So the line was first opened in 1896, if I'm not mistaken, which is, I think it's like apparently the third subway system to open anywhere in the world. The first one was, of course, London with the original Metropolitan Railway in 1863. I don't know what the second one was, but I'd hazard a guess and say it was somewhere in the United States. And interestingly, when the Glasgow Subway first opened, it wasn't electrified, even though electric railways had been in operation since I think about 1883 with the Volks Electric Railway in Brighton. Anyway, so this system wasn't electrified until about the 1930s, which I think is quite crazy. But yeah, originally it was run with cable haulage, almost like what you would get on a funicular railway, or in Dunedin if you were there before 1957, or indeed San Francisco today. Right, next stop, Bridge Street. So yeah, as I was saying, this original system was the original Glasgow Subway. I think back then might have been called the Glasgow Underground. Indeed, that's what the song says. It was originally a really weird system, and to an extent it still is. Because originally it was just the 6.5 mile double track loop, because that's the other thing, is that it's never been extended. And originally there were no points on the system at all, so the only way to get trains in and out of the depot was to actually stop in a pit, or stop at the bottom of a pit, and then you have this really big crane that would lift the individual coaches in and out of the pit at the beginning and end of each day. And I don't know about you, but to me that just sounds horrendously inefficient. What's that up there? and it explains why the track layout connecting the line with the depot has been so significantly altered, as we saw earlier. So originally there was another quirk I just remembered from the original system, was how they actually recovered broken down trains. They stand the next one behind and give them a push. And historically, each station on the system had these narrow island platforms, like what we just saw there at Bridge Street. But when the line was extensively refurbished in the 1970s, a lot of stations, like the next one, St Enoch, were modified to have different platform layouts. As I said earlier, a few of them, like as we just seen, Cessnock and West Street, etc., do still have the old island platforms, which I personally don't. I mean, it's kind of good for someone who prefers like historical things, if that makes any sense. But from a safety perspective, I don't like these island platforms. Indeed, the real system, of course, St Enoch here is one of the stations that's been extensively rebuilt during the 70s. And I think Govan is another one of those stations, and so is Hillhead. And indeed, I think I'll explain a bit about Partick as we get on. So, what else was I saying? Yeah, besides the strange way they got trains in and out of the depot, and how they recovered broken down trains on the old system, I don't really remember that many other unique aspects of it. Well, obviously from research and not from actually being there. Apparently there is some original Glasgow Subway rolling stock on display in the Riverside Museum, which I think is quite cool, because I think at some point in the future I'll definitely have to go to Glasgow and the Riverside Museum, not just for the old Glasgow Subway rolling stock, but there's also a South African steam locomotive on display there, a Class 15F I believe, and a few classic Scottish steam locomotives like the Caledonian Railway 422 number 123 and the Highland Railway Jones Goods number 103. I haven't got Jones Goods in TS yet, because I know the Caledonian Works made it for TS, but I do have Caledonian 123, and I have featured 123 on the channel before. I'll put a link to it in the top right corner if I remember to do so. Anyway, here we are at Buchanan Street. As dumb as this sounds, this station reminds me of someone I used to know at, I think, college days. I think her name was Ruby Buchanan. Don't know her anymore, of course. And according to the video Jeff Marshall made on the subway, this station is apparently in the shopping district of Glasgow. And it's one of those, as you can see, it's one of those cases where they've retained the original island platform, but they've built this entirely new one off to the side. And I don't know why there's no... you're right, mate. I don't know why there's no, like, glass barrier on this side. Alright, time to go again. Next stop, Calcadams. And, yeah, they certainly don't hang around at these stations. Mind you, I wouldn't want to on a high-density metro like this. So I think we're now on the northern side of the River Clyde, because I forget where it was where you go under it. But I think round the other side you go under the river between Partick and Govan. And curiously, and again if my research is correct, I think the vast majority of stations on this network, not really a network, but you know what I mean, the vast majority of stations on this line, I think they do retain their original names. Although Govan, that's technically still its original name, but it was originally called Govan Cross. And as I said at the start when I was reading out that initial blurb, or that initial pop-up on the screen, Ibrox used to be called Copeland Road. And yeah, it got its name changed to match the football stadium. Right, yeah, so this one that we're pulling up to now, Calcadens, is another one I remember as retaining its original island platform. The one thing I've just realised is that these banners down the side of the tunnel walls, where you can see the station name, that's the wrong colours. Because I believe in real life, on the inner circle side, which is what we're on now, these stripes are orange, and I think for the outer circle it's either grey or black. Presumably licensing couldn't put that in either because of licensing restrictions. Well, sure, I mean, the train, there's no proper branding, but like on the stations and indeed the trains, but it's still the correct rolling stock, and that's to me more important. It's still, despite the lack of realistic branding, I think it's still pretty cool to drive on this route. Alright, next stop, St George's Cross. Why is this train? Oh, hello. Didn't realise the speed limit got as severe as 18 kilometers an hour, but yeah, that looks like a very sharp curve. Curiously, I've just realised that there's actually no like little yellow boxes on this screen on the HUD that shows you the speed limits. Right, now we can floor it again. Yeah, there was that pop-up earlier that said you could theoretically still drive this train manually, but I think for the purposes of this video, possibly the next one, I will just use an automatic mode. The only other TS add-on in my collection, or that I actually own, that I know has got automatic operation, is the Shanghai Maglev, if anyone remembers that load of rubbish. In that instance, I felt that route was way too easy in terms of driving on it. Literally all you had to do, once you were in the Maglev, of course, was essentially just had to, you didn't really have to do anything else, you just had to press one button, and then it would drive your train by itself, like all the way to the next station. And I say the next station, but that system has does not have any intermediate stations. It's literally just, I think, the 19-mile route from Longyang Road in Shanghai to Pudong International Airport. And yeah, it's definitely one of, I think the Maglev is definitely one of the most underwhelming routes in TS, but each their own, of course. Right, just getting ready to press the auto start button again. I don't know if there's like a key command for it, but it would certainly help if there was. Doors locked. Just see the little light there. And we're off. I can't. Surely these trains wouldn't accelerate this quickly in real life. Although indeed I don't really understand why why it wanted me to put the throttle into parallel, like straight. That's essentially full power. Although I would assume that you would have to do that to enable the automatic mode. This is reminding me of the Bakerloo line add-on in TSW. How it's not really there's not really a lot of variation in the scenery, and most of the way all you're just seeing is the very dark tunnels. And here we are at Kelvin Bridge, which I believe gets its name from the River Kelvin. And I think, as Jeff Marshall pointed out, this is the widest island platform on the line. This timetable, this scheduling that we've got is so precise that it reminds me of the trains in Japan, although that's another system I've never actually visited myself. But I do know that in Japan their trains are scheduled so precisely that they're like timed to arrive at certain stations like to the second. And people apparently get, in the country at least, they apparently get very angry. Well, not angry, but they just get fussy if the trains are even 20 seconds late, which is definitely something we're not used to here in New Zealand. Although from memory, the trains, at least in Auckland and Wellington, they're reasonably punctual. Excursion trains, on the other hand. Anyway, next station is Hillhead. I could have sworn this was the other one besides the only other one besides Cessnock to retain its original entrance. I'm guessing that all the others would have been extensively modified to have entirely different entranceways. And I can see that coming up we've got Partick Station, which is a bit of an interesting sort because not only is it the only station on the subway to have fully integrated interchange with the National Rail Station, also called Partick, but I believe it's the only, technically it's the only new build station on the line, and I believe it was built to replace Merkland Street, which was a station on the original subway, and that's technically the subway's only abandoned station. And here we are at Hillhead. Yeah, this is one of those stations I was on about where they've built an entirely new platform, instead of just everyone using the narrow island platform. It's kind of like, I think for Londoners, you'll understand what if you know I think it's Clapham Common and Clapham North stations on the Northern Line. You'll be familiar with this kind of layout, because those two stations, I believe, are the only ones on the London Underground that still have narrow island platforms. And so I think Angel, also on the Northern Line, used to have narrow island platforms, but that got modified in the 1970s, and is now famous for having a very wide platform. I think it's the northbound side. Don't quote me on that. In some ways, I'm still a bit of a novice with regards to my knowledge of London Underground. Next stop, Kelvin Hall. I don't remember whether or not this station still has its original platform or it's been altered, but I suppose we'll find out soon enough. I've actually got my fingers on like the A and the D keys on the keyboard, which is what you normally use to control the throttle, but I mean that's just a natural instinct because I'm so used to. Wait, no, I'm not making that same mistake with mistakenly pressing that button again. A light here for Kelvin Grove Museum. What that's about? So just looking here, just got the pause break key again. That's pausing the game again. I've just noticed these double arrows. Excuse me. For St Enoch and Buchanan Street, and obviously that means like an interchange with National Rail services. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that St Enoch is quite close to Glasgow Central, and Buchanan Street is close to Queen Street Station. Interestingly, there used to be two other like big mainline terminus stations in Glasgow called Buchanan Street and St Enoch, but I think they were both closed and demolished in the 1960s. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I remember hearing that these two stations are for Central and Queen Street respectively. So I'm almost recovering a bit from that nasty cough. It's not the Rona, but I don't actually know what it is. Anyway, I suppose we'll get back to driving. Well, I say driving, but get back to continuing this run. Just looking down at my notes, I see that we've only got 2 stations to go. So we've got Partick and then Govan. And once we get to Govan, we'll be taking this train out of service again and going back to the depot. The door's locked, and we can go again. Oh. Now I'm a bit confused now because I think the reverser is still in automatic. No, indeed it is. Considering how old these trains are, I'm actually quite impressed by how well this ATO system works and how it's able to maintain, like, hold the speed of the train even when you're going downhill. And indeed, you can just see there, just past the platform here, or past the platform at Partick, that after the station I think we'll be going under the River Clyde and then ascending again as we get closer to Govan. It's like what you get on, I think lines on the section of the Frankfurt U-Bahn, I think between like Willybrandplatz and Hauptwache, or south of Willybrandplatz, between there and Schweizerplatz, where the line has to suddenly descend really at a really sharp angle in order to go under the River Main. We can go again. Stop, Govan. So yeah, you would generally expect that, because I think even on the London Underground, I think like with the Bakerloo and Northern and Jubilee lines, I'm pretty sure they had to, that little space we just went through there, if I can get to it without looking too unprofessional, that's Partick. Oh, can't actually go into it, but I think we just went through the site of Merkland Street Station. Wait, why does it suddenly look like we've got... Okay, that is... How the hell did we randomly get raindrops on the windscreen when we are in a tunnel? I don't know. Sometimes this game still kind of throws me for a loop, even though I've played it long. I've been playing it for over 7 years now. I don't know whether that speaks to my dedication or just the ridiculous amount of spare time I've had. Anyway, staying quiet for the time being because I need to catch my breath in a way.
The service terminates here at Govan. Please leave the train.
That's interesting. We've got little mini announcements in a way. I don't think they'll be scripted. I think that would just be scripted. Kind of like excuse me. Kind of like with the Class 350 on the WCML Trent Valley. Because whilst that train does have working announcements, but I think that's only in like the default scenarios that you get with the route. So it's a bit of a hassle to try and set up the announcements, I believe. It's not like with the Frankfurt route, where the way they've set up the announcements there is a lot more simple. That's how you get air conditioning, or like extra ventilation for the passengers. You open both of these doors, and then you look like an idiot. Alright, as we are terminating our service here at Govan and returning to the depot, we must now disable ATO. First return. Yeah, I think I know how to. I think I've worked out how to change between manual and automatic. So that's what we'll do. Right, doors are locked, and we can proceed. That's a point. If any Glaswegians are watching, or like anyone who's been on the real Glasgow Subway, Does the system actually have automatic, or does the station or the system have like announcements for the passengers, like saying the next state, or where the announcements would go something like this: the next station is Partick, change here for National Rail Services, or the next station is Ibrox, change here for the football. No. Aha. I have just had a major revelation. At least I hope I have. Because this spot that we're going through right now, I think this is the pit, or this is where the old pit used to be, where they would, on the old system, where they would stop the trains and they'd have a crane lift them up out of the pit and onto the depot sidings. As you can tell, because just realised that right now we're above the, or that we're just then we were right below the depot. I don't know if we'll go into this exact shed, but we'll see what happens, I suppose. You can really learn a lot from about the Glasgow Subway just by playing this add-on in TS, and that's another reason why I would certainly recommend it. Yeah, I do quite like underground routes in Train Simulator, or just metro lines in general. You know, like trams and as I say, underground like Glasgow, London, Frankfurt. Although curiously not Berlin. I mean, there technically is a simulator for the Berlin U-Bahn out there, but it's part of the World of Subways series, and obviously not a Dovetail Games or any of the TS third-party developers. And I was always really confused about the depot on the original, like pre-1970s version of this subway, because I thought it was actually at a different site. But having just driven through what I think would have been the original pit, just before the crossover junction, I'm pretty sure that depot building is at least on the same site as the original, because as I've seen from the old footage, they would raise and lower the cars in and out of the pit with a great big crane. It was almost like a gantry crane. I think you would see at Hut Workshops in the Wellington area. Right, so now that we're at the depot, I suppose we'll change ends again. I think that's the only reason why these trains are bi-directional, is for like depot movements, because ordinarily, or because given that the main passenger service is just the one loop going round and round in circles, it makes you wonder why they would have bi-directional trains in the first place. Let's just set up this other cab again. And I don't know about you, but I probably wouldn't have these windows down when you're actually driving through the tunnels, unless you want a bit more ventilation. Right, certainly don't need the cab lights on, I don't think. We can put the parking brake off, and we can proceed into the sidings. The signal's red, but there's the little white lights, and I think that's kind of like a call-on aspect, or some kind of special permission to pass a red signal. Right, well, since I don't think we'll have much time before stopping, like between stopping and that marker and the scenario ending, I suppose I'll take this opportunity now to really, to sum up my overall thoughts on Thomson Interactive's Glasgow Subway add-on. And it's pretty good, in all honesty. I mean, that's partially from personal bias, because as I said earlier, I really do like the Glasgow Subway in real life, but no, as we've seen, I mean, even though I was running the train in with the automatic operation, it's still a pretty interesting route, even though there's no scenery aside from around here at the depot. And yeah, as I remember saying earlier with regards to the pricing, I would say that if you want to buy this, I would certainly recommend buying this route for yourself, but not at its full price. So I would suggest that you try to get it whilst it's still on sale at 25% off. I'll leave a link to the Steam page in the description for this video, as I always do with the TS stuff, and TrainSim World for that matter, so you can go and check it out for yourself. And I did actually read the reviews on Steam before buying this thing. Something I like is the interactive doors for this depot, because I've never seen that before with any TS add-on, and now this is impressive. I did not think it would actually be animated to move up and down on that track, kind of like a garage door that you would see at someone's house. Just waiting for the back end of the train to go in so we can hopefully watch the door going down. There it goes. That is cool. I know it's like a really small and I think frivolous bit of detailing, but sometimes it's the little details that really count. Yeah, now we're in the sidings, I suppose, and back at Broomloan Depot. I suppose I'd better just say the usual thing, which is simply thank you very much for watching, and I hope you've enjoyed this look at the Thomson Interactive's Glasgow Subway add-on. And yeah, stay tuned for the other videos I've got planned. So well, if you see my community posts, you'll know what I'm on about. But yeah, I'll probably record another video on this route at least, so stay tuned for that one. And yeah, that's all I've really got to say now. So yeah, take care everyone. Thank you very much for watching once again, and I'll see you in the next video. Ta-ra, folks.